We're now going to talk about how to find the area of a square given a variety of different things. First, let's remember the 45, 45, 90 triangle, just in case we need it, which I'm sure we will. Now, in a square, you actually never really need this process. That's something that you almost never need in this because we can use both the area formula for a square, so the area is side squared, and you can also use the area formula for a rhombus because a square is a rhombus. So 1/2 diagonal 1 diagonal 2 is also something that you can use for a square. So in this particular case, also remember you may have seen it as d1 d2 over 2. Now in a square, both diagonals are the same, so it would be 1/2 times the square of the diagonal. So both of these are things that we're going to use, and we may never actually need the area formula, the process for finding the area of a regular polygon. So let's say that I have side length 8. Well, if I'm told that the side length is 8, I would just take 8 squared, and I would get 64 units squared. Done. Now let's say I have an apothem or apothem of length 9. In a square, this is the center, and the center of a square actually cuts this in half. So if I'm told that the apothem or apothem is 9, that means the side length is 18. So I can just say it's 18 squared, and that's 324 units squared. Done. Now let's say I forget that that's a rule. I can still do this problem. So I can use the process for finding the area of a regular polygon. The central angle of a square would be 360 divided by the number of sides. So that's 90 degrees. So I have this situation. It's a 90-degree angle, and then the apothem split cuts that in half, so I have a 45. So I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Since this is 9, that's also 9 because that's kind of how it works, which makes this 9, which makes this 18. And then once I have 18, then I can use the formula for a square. Let's say I forget that I'm even doing a square, though. I can still find the area of this triangle and then multiply it by the number of triangles there would be in the picture, and there would be 4. So let's do that. 1/2 times the base, which is 18, times the height, which is 9. That gives me 81. And then there are 4 of them. So 81 times 4 is 324, which is what I got up there. Now let's find the area of a square given diagonal 12. So if the diagonal is 12, I would just use the rhombus formula, 1/2 times diagonal 1, diagonal 2, since they're both 12, 1/2 times 12 squared. So that's going to be 72 units squared. Done. But let's say I forget that. I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle here. So I can draw this picture. This is 12. I can find a side length. 12 over square root of 2 equals x over 1. That ends up being 12 over square root of 2. We can simplify that, and it ends up being 12 root 2 over 2, which is 6 root 2. So each side is 6 root 2. If I wanted to square that, I would have to type it in parentheses in the calculator. So 6 squared to 2 squared would get me 72 units squared. And so that's another way to do it. Now, radius 4, because of the properties of a square, this ends up being half of the length of the entire diagonal. So the diagonal is 8. So I can do 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. They're both the same. So in this problem, it would be 32 units squared would be the area of this square. Um, but again, let's say I forget. I can find the central angle, which is 360 divided by 4, and I end up with 90 degrees. And then I do the apothem split, so that cuts that in half. The apothem forms a right angle, so I have a 45 here. And then I have to find these lengths. So I would draw the triangle. This is a 4. That's an x. So 4 over root 2 equals x over 1. Divide the 4 by 2 and put a root 2 after it. So I get x equals 2 square root of 2. So the whole side is going to be 4 square root of 2. And so I can either use side squared, which would be 4 square root of 2 squared, which ends up being 32. Or I can actually finish the process. So let's find the area of this triangle, this triangle here. So I have 1/2 times 2 root 2 times 4 root 2. That's 8 times 2 is 16 divided by 2. That's 8. And then multiply by the number of triangles that I have, which would be 4. 8 times 4 gives me 32. So no matter how I did it, I would still get 32 as my answer.